Parias, also known as Nakare-1011c, was a terraformed world far into a possible future, transformed by humans as a gargantuan hunting reserve in an unstable age of space exploration. After seeding the world with quite a few game species, mostly from North America, the planet was promptly abandoned during an interplanetary period of chaos and warfare, with humanity never returning to the Nakare system ever again. Humans may have never returned to the world they abandoned, but the many species of plants and animals humanity left behind among the stars have expanded to fill the niches of a new world. Welcome to Parias, a world abandoned. Last episode, we examined the Great Forest of Central Lucindo, on the western continent of the world. This environment is one of the most similar to the northeastern region of North America, causing many clades of animals to furiously compete for a region most similar to their native ranges. This episode explores the Western Floodlands, a low-lying, semi-tropical landscape quite unique from the rest of the continent. The whole region gets intense hurricanes and tropical storms, assisted by the warm water pulled southward to the southern pole of Parias, causing plant diversity here to be especially high, bested on the continent only by the tropical jungles along the Lapis coast, which will be looked into further in a future episode. The summers in these swamps have massive storms, but the autumn cycles come with fires of a dry period, with some of the wetlands drying up at this time. This region is split into 3 subregions based on elevation and plant ranges, forcing the animals to adapt to 3 vastly different conditions. The marshland, found primarily along the coasts and along the floodplains of the many rivers of the area, are a place where small plants and rice, a key crop when humans were around but rampant and feral since abandonment, thrive in the light of the suns. Another subregion is the hummocks, ebbing and flowing in places where there is slightly less water, such as land further away from the river systems, and in places where beaver dam buildup has allowed for a drying out of sorts, and allowing large trees the place to grow without being drowned. The uplands exist in higher and drier climates, more accurately resembling what the land looked like when humans were around at the time. These subregions are often quite dynamic over deep time, with the borders changing over decades and depending on the intensity of storms or the occasional wildfire. Across most of the entire region, a series of non-angiosperms are common across the land. The Lucindan common moss and the Lucindan ever fern, plants seen in episodes prior, have adaptations that make them well adapted for the region. During the moist, stormy wet season, this place allows them to grow exponentially fast, sucking up moisture at a rate unseen in other parts of the continent. The Lucindan common moss is found all over the trees and the ground, and take up the most ground cover of the hummock subregion. Usually in the dry months around fire season, the common moss is quite responsible for eating up moisture and allowing fires to spread across old forest and hummock alike. Starting with the plants of the marsh region, with one of the most common is river bottom grass, an annual clumping bunch grass that grows partially to fully submerged and filled with oils that allow the grass to float. The roots are very thin and delicate for a grass of its size, as it primarily uses them to attach itself to other rice tussocks or other clumps of floating plants and debris. The primary intake of nutrients is through the submerged stems and leaves. This allows the grass to grow in low oxygen environments, and the non-submerged portions take in air, while the submerged portions take in nutrients and water. Oftentimes, clumps of these grasses are made of multiple unrelated individuals that have connected their roots together for the sake of mutual protection and resource sharing, as well as for increased buoyancy. These clumps can balloon into massive, interconnected colonies, all made of connected but genetically distinct individuals. And as an individual, river bottom grass is a few feet tall or across, but colonies can take up entire marshes, acting as a shroud between land and water. River bottom grass has been driven to this position by competition from other grass species, pushing this species out of drier habitats and into flooded waters and estuaries. The common grass swamp fern can be found in wetlands across the entire planet, converging on a similar wetland plant design. This medium wetland plant prefers submergence in water and a density of toxins that make them generally unpalatable for most herbivores. They thrive especially in the marshes here, and can be found elsewhere on the continent and the greater world of Parias. The oily oak has converged a similar lifestyle to the bald cypress of Earth, but has its own unique adaptations to thrive in the marsh and to keep its main competitor, the walking willow, in check. This tree grows up to 20 meters tall, but is a slow-growing species that requires a lot of sun and surface water that is around a meter deep. The acorns of this species are dropped after the end of the fire season in autumn, and the acorns of the buoy oak are buoyant, with large deposits of oils in the acorn shell, between the shell, and in the seed within. These oils allow the whole acorn to float, and the position of it gives the seed a vertical orientation, optimal for root establishment. The buoy oak acorn only germinates if said acorn has been floating for multiple months, thus allowing it to have the least competition by growing in the deepest water. As the seed begins germination, the first step for the taproot of this oak is to dive. The heavy, large taproot will act as a counterbalance for the plant, allowing the seedling to maintain a vertical position within the tap water. The tree can essentially function as a semi-free, floating aquatic plant for several years, or until the crown outweighs the roots, causing it to begin to list. As the sapling grows larger, the whole tree will slowly sink, a purposeful adaptation that allows the tree to find sediment if it was unable to initially. The carpet hyacinth is a smaller plant, covering the surface of permanent water bodies like lakes and rivers. These plants have short, highly feathered roots, used primarily for nutrient intake rather than for any sort of anchoring. Each bulb only grows a singular leaf during its lifetime, and will not regrow a leaf it is cut off or otherwise removed. Much like their ancestors on Earth, they are excellent at floating on the surface of the water. Carpet hyacinth grows in unified cycles, flowering for an entire wet season if left alone. Their flowers are purple and white in color, and are primarily pollinated by the wind, along with some flies, beetles, and butterfly species, of course. After flowering and setting seed, all members of the colony will die, sinking to the bottom of the water body at once. They are quite packed with nutrients, making them a common plant to be consumed by herbivores, and their composing bodies are key nutrients for other plants, including future carpet hyacinth colonies. Tanglemint is another common floater of the region, but often does better on land and in shallow water compared to the deep water carpet hyacinth and river bottom grass. The stems of tanglemint are quite flaccid and sensitive to touch, and will often wrap around anything it bumps into, including other stems. These tangled mats can be a few meters across, but these plants most often wrap around other plants, not even restricted to conspecifics. Tanglemint is a mint descendant that may be beneficial to growing oaks or willows, their general unpalatability keeping herbivores away from taking down young trees. Once any stalk of the tanglemint reaches its maximum height of roughly 30 centimeters, flowers will be grown from the auxiliary buds. These flowers are lavender to purple in color, and their morphology is typical of a mint flower. They are pollinated by many different kinds of insects and will bloom until hit by frost. Reedy stalkweed is an Asclepias descendant that has evolved to take up a long stalk out of the water and thrives in swamps and brackish areas. The area that stays under the water is thicker and wood-like to ensure the plant stays rooted. Reedy stalkweed has a thick trunk on the bottom, large and long leaves along the plant, around 1.5 to 2.5 meters in height, and with inflorescent flowers growing on the top of the plant. Not much changes from the reproductive cycle of its ancestor have occurred, but the petals of the flowers have evolved many different colors in this genus. The walking willow is a medium-sized evergreen tree with a wide, rounded to flattened dome-shaped crown. Their trunk is short, stout, and buttressed. Alternate branching structures with large, alternatively arranged leaves on the outmost tips of the branches also occur. The leaves are housed on drooping branchlets, which eventually connect to the ground and form large, sturdy aerial roots. The scaffolding/primary branches continue to produce branches as they grow outwards, the aerial roots supporting their nearly horizontal growth pattern. These willows build islands by catching sediment and flood debris using their aerial roots, causing mounds of debris to slowly build up underneath the scaffolding branches. By the end of a walking willow's life cycle, these debris piles are often 2 to 3 meters in height and spanning the entire width of the crown. Due to how quickly these trees grow, the wood of the main trunk is brittle, and most main trunks of specimens don't live past the age of 30. The most common cause of death is the burying of the trunk, leading to infections and ultimately death. However, the scaffolding branches often continue to live well after the main trunk dies, using the aerial roots to support the trunkward side as the outermost crown begins to establish itself as a new trunk. Snakereed is a giant arundo reed descendant that lives in the marshes and swamps, on the edges of hummocks and debris piles. These large grasses are 3 to 5 meters in full height, and reproduce both sexually and asexually. Sexual reproduction only occurs in old stands, and often happens in response to fire. Flowering occurs during winter after the autumn fire season. This seeding window makes them a critical source of food for small animals in the region, occurring just as most other food sources from last year runs dry. Flagpole grass is an evergreen iris descendant that is somewhat tall and acts more like a grass more than anything else. They grow in flattened tufts of alternating leaves tipped with spines, and oval-shaped tubers buried beneath the muck of the slow-moving rivers and streams. These tubers are relatively deep in the muck, allowing it to withstand most herbivory, heavy floods, and fires. The flowers of flagpole grass are borne on an incredibly tall stalk with the largest specimens having flow stalks 4 meters or 13 feet tall. Groups of flowers are produced on branches that alternate up the stalk, with a final triplet of flowers at the top. The last of the marsh subregion plants is the testudo lotus, being pushed to thrive in any environment they can be found in. Morphs on land and in the rivers or lakes are quite different from each other, but they share many traits. Both plants are large, evergreen, perennial plants. The leaves are incredibly large, with the largest being up to 2 meters in diameter. New leaves emerge upright from the basal clump and slowly droop towards the ground with age. On a mature specimen, the entire plant is shielded with these large, waxy leaves, reminiscent of the Roman testudo formation. When the leaves die completely, they are retained on the plant, much to the detriment of other plants in the region when the fire season comes along. The testudo lotus primarily reproduces through its rhizomes, which spread out laterally from the parent plant. Moving to the more consistently lush yet drier area of the hummock, we have a variety of other plants, primarily dominated by large trees, much like conventional forest. The Harold tupelo is a large, incredibly slow-growing tree, preferring open environments and dominating the canopies. This tree's slow growth rate means it often spends many decades as an understory tree in reedbed habitats, before becoming large enough to overtop its competitors, chiefly being the walking willow and the myrmic great bean. The trunk is very highly buttressed, much more resembling a pillar. The bark is gray in color and deeply furrowed at the base, but becomes more flaky towards the crown. The Harold tupelo flowers during the summer and sets fruit during the fall, with these fruit falling to the ground throughout the season and into early winter. A plant that has more of a bite is the blue climbing sundew, found in shaded habitats across the bioregion. This plant is a carnivore, preferring to eat insects and young arboreal vertebrates. The blue climbing sundew is primarily an epiphyte, but can also be found on the ground. Their novel adaptation is being unrooted when young and technically capable of movement. If in a place with low nutrients or prey populations, the climbing sundew can move its branches in response to stimuli. This species has adapted to use their sticky leaves to climb up taller nearby plants. Hummock grass is an evergreen perennial plant that functions similarly to bamboo and reeds. Its vegetative structure is grass-like, with long, upward-pointing leaves, which overlap one another at the base to create thin but strong pseudostems. The plant can be highly variable in size, ranging from small, 1-meter grass-like forms to tall 4-meter forms that more accurately resemble bamboo. The form of the plant depends on the amount of herbivorous pressure it experiences. If the vegetative material of the hummock grass is repeatedly damaged through browsing, then the plant will begin to grow short, stocky stems with incredibly long, grass-like leaves. Any new stems will also grow in this form until herbivorous pressure decreases. However, if herbivorous pressure is low, the hummock grass will revert to a cane-like form. This morph produces tall, thin stems, with shorter leaves that are more closer to parallel with the stem. The cane morph is the only form that produces flowers. Octopus bromeliad is a giant air plant descendant that exists as an obligate epiphyte, thriving in established forest canopies far above the plant politics of the understory. The leaves of this plant are typically 1 to 2 meters in length and curl at the tips. Coloration is a grayish green, with splotches of purple running up the leaves. This species is monocarpic, only flowering once before death, and flowering typically occurs after 10 to 15 years of growth. The flower stalk is usually 1 meter, 3.3 feet in length, and consists of a multi-branched stalk bearing hundreds of bright red flowers. These flowers are usually pollinated by long-tongued moths, bees, and occasionally birds, which will opportunistically drink the vast amounts of nectar these flowers produce. Their seeds are fluffy and carried by the wind to other trees and hummocks. Lucinden ivy is a Hedera descendant that favors moist and shaded areas. This clade greatly resembles the genus Hedera on Earth, being direct descendants of them, and as a result of their hybridization. The leaves range from triple-lobed to diamond-like in shape, and are evergreen and waxy. The specific on each species is different, many of which are distinct enough to not be able to hybridize at all. All species of Lucinden ivy produce dark blue to black fruit, which are primarily bird dispersed. Alligator lantern has a devious strategy to thrive in the swamps. This plant is a small, herbaceous plant endemic to the dark understory of the hummocks. The plant possesses a basal rosette of double pinnately compound leaves, resembling those of a fern. After several years of growth, an individual will eventually flower. The flowering stalk of the alligator lantern is bare of leaves, before ending in a terminal inflorescence of pale, white flowers. The flowers have lost the nectar spurs of their ancestor due to their unique pollination strategy. These flowers appear to have no scent, but in reality they produce chemicals very similar to the pheromones produced by alligators. This scent naturally attracts alligators to the location of the plants, for various reasons. The pheromones lure in these reptiles, and as they walk amongst the colony, they brush up against the exerted stamens, which deposit pollen upon them. This pollen is then deposited onto the long, hair-like stigma of other colonies. Pawnana is a rather shrubbish plant. The flowers themselves are maroon to white in color, and are roughly 2.5 centimeters to 1 inch in all dimensions. The flowers also have an overwhelming stench of rotting meat, designed to attract flies and scavengers, which are Pawnana's primary pollinators. After being pollinated, each flower will become an elliptical fruit that contains sweet yellowish flesh and 1 to 4 flattened seeds. These fruits are incredibly heavy, and multiple developing at once causes the thin, flimsy trunk to bend downward, allowing the fruit to be gently deposited on the forest floor when ripe. After a trunk successfully flowers and fruits, it will slowly die, dropping its leaves one by one from the bottom up. As this process happens, the root system will produce 1 to 3 new trunks, repeating the cycle once more. These colonies can get multiple meters in diameter and will form a ring-like shape when left undisturbed. The upland is a drier and traditional environment that more resembles southern or central Lucindo, but a bit wetter. Some of the plants in this region includes the lightning palm. This dwarf palmetto descendant is all but a dwarf now, maxing out at 35 to 50 meters or 115 to 164 feet in height. They grow incredibly slowly, often taking well over a Parian century to reach the mature height. The lightning palmetto exhibits a high degree of phenotypic plasticity. The main determinant of which morph an individual palm grows into is sunlight availability. In a high exposure, a supermajority of individuals will grow in accordance to the canopy morph. Likewise, in low light, Low exposure environments make a supermajority of individuals grow much shorter to the understory morph. Generally, the mature height of a canopy morph individual is 66 feet or more, while the mature height of a mature understory morph individual is less than 15 meters. The seeds of both morphs have an incredibly tough coat, which allows the seed to remain dormant and undamaged by the digestive systems of animals that eat the fruit, along with other potential threats such as fires, floods, and frost. The immediate frond abscission of the understory stage of this species is shown as a defense mechanism against epiphytes by providing them very little surface area to grip onto. In addition, the large piles of dead leaves that are found underneath understory morphs are slow to decay and cover the soil densely, which prevents the germination of climbing lilianas and leaves. Finally, the extensive leaf piles are also quite flammable, and if caught aflame, the intense heat produced will easily scorch any plant near the leaf piles out of existence. Due to its extreme height, dense crown composed mostly of dead material, and the downward angle of the fronds which quickly removes rain from the leaf surface, Sabal ascendens is the most common tree to be struck by lightning during thunderstorms. That moment is when the life cycle of an individual lightning palmetto often, but not always, comes to a brilliant and fiery end. Upon being struck by lightning, the crown of the palm will burst into flame, all of the dead fronds acting as fuel to keep this fireball alive. As the crown disintegrates, it drops burning debris onto the crowns of neighboring trees, oftentimes catching them on fire as well. In the wake of mass fiery die-offs, the typical evergreen inhabitants of hummock forests may not be able to recover, as competition from open habitat species may impede colonization. Blastfruit is a feral citrus tree that retains the same general characteristic as their ancestors, which fully hybridized long ago. Their bark is dark brown, and the leaves are large and dark green in color. The higher branches are covered in thorns for defense. Fully grown individuals can vary between 5.5 to 7 meters in height. Their fruits are yellow in color, more like their ancestor, the trifoliate orange, rather than their other parent, the cultivated oranges. Once an individual fruit is ripe, it detaches from the tree and breaks into multiple pieces upon hitting the ground. This makes it easier for the seeds and the acidic, sour flesh that surrounds them to be swallowed or float on the water's surface in case these chunks end up in lakes and rivers of the area. These trees possess a dense crown of large leaves, allowing them to catch the maximum number of sunlight. Myrmic great bean, a honey locust descendant, is a large plant that is found firmly in hummock land, transitioning from wet to dry. The trunk is heavily buttressed, with large, hollow warts on the root collar and all the way up the trunk. These trees are moderately long-lived, with the oldest specimens being more than 2 Parian centuries old. They produce fruits that are long, flattened pods with 4 to 8 seeds inside, and are subsequently eaten by megafauna such as the bearilla and hippopotamus. Within the hollow warts of the Myrmic great bean's skin live the pruner ants, a descendant of leafcutter ants that have specialized their way into the hollow warts, making their nests inside of them. These ants will prune the leaves of competing plants in a radius around the tree that is directly proportional to the size of the tree's crown. These clippings are carried into the nest to feed a symbiotic fungus on which the ants depend on for food. The ants dispose of waste fungi and other refuse directly outside the tree, resulting in a ring of very fine mulch surrounding the base of each myrmic great bean's trunk. In addition, the timing of the flowers in spring lines up perfectly with the nuptial flights of the pruner ants that reside within the trees themselves. Crusher rose is a close relative of the fall rose of the Lucindan highlands depicted in episode 3. These massive flowers make new stems that can reach 4 meters in length and 7.6 centimeters or 3 inches in diameter. The branches are wider and less flexible at the tips than at the base to prevent structural failure. Each crusher rose produces multiple of these stems per season, adorned with large pinnate leaves and 3 to 7 leaflets each. At the end of the branch, it will produce a terminal inflorescence of 1 to 3 basketball-sized blossoms. The weight of these blossoms will cause the branch to inevitably and violently crash down, crushing anything underneath it. In order to avoid breaking their own branches, the flowering stems of this rose species do not lignify or become woody until fruit development has begun. After hitting the ground, the flowers will open and the branch will root itself. The flowers themselves are pollinated by insects and birds and even some mammals that brush up against them. After being successfully pollinated, the crusher rose will develop 1 to 3 softball-sized fruits, each containing around half a dozen seeds. These fruits are designed to be distributed by megafauna and occasionally floods. Instead of its massive flowers being solely pollinated by a single species of bat, the crusher rose uses its large flowers as a battering ram. The heavy flowers and fruit of this species will weigh upon the stems of nearby herbaceous plants and shrubs, causing them to bend away from the plant. Over time, this causes a clearing to form around specimens of crusher rose, as long as there are no other previously established woody species nearby. Across the bioregions are a diversity of fungi as well, mainly from other parts of the continent. Native fungal species did not thrive in the region, as the dynamic forests and wetlands have allowed specialists to be overcome by generalists that thrive in multiple environments. The yellow-lipped and the bruised amanita were excellent decomposers of rotted animal carcasses. Forest egg can be quite similar in many ways, but disperse by resembling birds' eggs in appearance and smell, often causing scavengers to eat them and disperse their spores accidentally. The great amanita is a massive relative of the previously mentioned clade, which make large mushroom heads that can be quite big. All 4 of those previous fungal species form a clade together, to the exclusion of all other fungi on Parias. Tuber mimics, in comparison to forest egg, is more commonly approached by consumers, being high in nutrients and using this stage of its life to spread the spores of its next generation. Common shine shroom and bluish turkey tail thrives in the highly competitive nature of the marshland, the hummocks, and the upland due to the high amounts of rotting, over-competitive trees. The dead and dying foliage are a perfect ground for these wood-eating specialists. Sauromycondius is a genus found in the bioregion as well as across the continent, being rather common here, but mentioned earlier in Parian history as snakeskin rot, specializing in dying trees in less moist environments, preferring the drier sides of trees when converting lignin into energy. Plants, fungi, and animals have all made their stakes and claims on the abandoned world, spreading into a plethora of new niches, but other kingdoms of life have done well too. The Swiss cheese slug eats microbes, mosses, and mushrooms, but its name may be quite deceiving. In fact, they are a derived slime mold gray in coloration, and composed of roughly 10,000 cells per individual. Their cells have specialized into different roles to keep the individual alive, such as shell and antenna parts. Like a slime mold, they slowly crawl across the floor in search of nutrients, and reproduce asexually by a few different means. Animals exist in the region as well, adapted to the dynamic forests and the many-fronted plant wars. Of the great diversity of animals in the western floodlands, the annelids have representatives in the region, primarily with the Lucindan common worm. This group diversified in response to being released on the continent long ago, and are generalist enough to survive in soils all over the place. They have been mentioned in previous episodes, and whilst they may not look particularly impressive, their underground range pushes for hundreds of kilometers, and they are an essential food source to many other species. Across the region are a couple of mollusks that have used their anatomies in very unique ways to survive and propagate. Monkey-tailed mussels are tiny bivalves with a disproportionately large foot that can wrap around submerged roots and stems. The mussels use this to anchor themselves onto the tangled reed beds of the swamp, usually elevated from the swamp bed with better access to river currents. Unlike most bivalves, it cannot retract its body inside its shell in response to predators. Instead, it will either retreat deeper into the underwater foliage or disentangle itself and attempt to wriggle away. Similar to their ancestors, monkey-tailed mussels start life as an underdeveloped larvae that must latch onto the gills of a fish. After absorbing enough nutrients from the host and having developed sufficiently, the larvae resembles more like a tiny worm, at which point it will drop from the host and begin filter feeding on the riverbed. Maturity is reached at an age of 5 years, at which point the mussel will periodically release gametes. Monkey-tailed mussels are a keystone species of the swamps, improving water quality by filtering debris particles. The marsh terror is a giant cuttlefish descendant that is a swift pursuit predator. The marsh terror uses sharp hooks on their arms to capture and masticate prey, alongside enlarged and more muscular fin surface for mobuliform swimming, and a significant amount of countershading to help hide them among the foliage. The marsh terror is capable of tolerating lower salinities and oxygen content than most cephalopods, allowing them to exploit river habitats. Its fourth pair of limbs have developed into hectocotyle, or reproductive tentacles. Its mantle is a little over a meter in length, and it weighs up to 25 kilograms when fully grown. Its fins have enlarged and developed a triangular, more muscular structure that provides the bulk of propulsion. While it can change color using its chromatophores, it usually remains a countershaded green color. Similarly to other cuttlefish, the marsh terror is semiparous and dies after spawning, with its eggs being laid on the underside of rocks, sunken logs, or other natural cover in brackish waters. After hatching, juveniles enter the water column and feed on zooplankton, transitioning to larger game as they mature. Common snake slug is an arboreal carnivore descended from the banana slug, of all things. This type of long slug has adapted to have a long set of slicing pincers that act like jaws to catch prey more efficiently. Being around 40 centimeters long on average, they use their needle-like modified radula to dissolve and suck up prey, along with its digestive juices. They are targeted occasionally by larger arboreal predators, but this task is quite a dangerous one to complete. The small and humble bobber snail is endemic to the marshes, found commonly on both the sea and the land. They have a breathing pore that extends into a short siphon. This extended siphon works like a snorkel, allowing the snail to comfortably eat and persist underwater. Bobber snails range from 3 to 10 centimeters in shell diameter, with a round green shell color that assists in hiding them among the floating plants. Some bobber snails eat toxic plants, allowing some populations of them to become toxic as well. The arthropods here have a select diversity in the region, dominated primarily by beetles, ants, butterflies, and shrimp. These arthropods include a massive range of animals from elsewhere, primarily with beetles common across the continent and the world. The fat burrowers, skin biters, mussel eaters, and fusers are all beetle descendants specialized to target specific parts of large animals to parasitize. They each specialize for different parts, with their names rather intuitive for targeting what organs or systems of a specific host. Fusers specifically enjoy blood. Snipper beetles are a distant relative of these parasitic species and genera, but prefer a vegetarian diet. Snipper beetles are found in the hummock region primarily, preferring drier land and high amounts of mosses and other simple plant material. Snipper beetles have been incredibly successful in other regions on Parias as well, using the force of pure numbers to get by. All of these beetles have been successful in southwestern Lucindo, making up a major population and providing a key niche in the ecosystem, with quite a few large animals that specialize in eating bugs. The western viceroy has migrated across a few places, preferring the flowers in this region for their diet as adults. Their diet of consuming toxic plants as caterpillars allows them to be almost untouched in all their life cycles. Butterflies have been incredibly successful in these swamps, using different strategies to come about. Another such is the mooch fly, a butterfly that mimics the aposematic patterns of the western viceroy, but having none of the toxins themselves, allowing them to be more generalist during their caterpillar stage. This strategy works most of the time, as predators associate the mooch fly's bark with the bite of the western viceroy, so leave both species alone. The white-tipped butterfly prefers drier environments, so lives further inland in the upland subregion. They have a similar diet to the western viceroy, preferring more toxic plants when in their juvenile stage. They have long white tips on the bottom side of their wings, using this to distinguish their species from other butterflies in the region. The coastal flaming butterfly, or the flaming butterfly, takes a different approach. Being more generalist as young, these animals are not toxic and do not have the coloration of their poisonous cousins. Their caterpillars resemble bird droppings in appearance and coloration, using this as a distraction to eat fairly unimpeded. Sometimes this backfires, as mud crabs will sometimes eat flaming butterfly caterpillars, thinking they are actual droppings. But as adults, they are a vibrant red and orange, using the strategy of mass numbers to continue to the next generation. At any given time, western Lucindo has billions of flaming butterflies, and whilst many of them are eaten by other predators, mainly birds, there are more than enough to maintain their massive populations. One arthropod group that has used the variable land to their advantage is the oil spill ant. These eusocial generalists eat anything in their path and have colonies on a scale between 1,000 and well over 100,000 workers at any given time, including multiple queens. Individuals within the colony will bunch up together to form a living raft where workers aggregate at the bottom, while queens and brood rest within the layers of ants. The colony may settle at some foliage at water's edge when resting, but are mostly active and foraging when fully afloat. The colony will consume a variety of morsels that happen to float in their path, such as seeds, berries, drowning insects, carcasses, plants, almost anything really. At a certain size, the colony becomes too large to maintain cohesion and will instead split into multiple smaller rafts. Oil spill colonies will incorporate anything floaty into its living raft to keep the colony afloat, most commonly driftwood. The rafts can slowly move across a body of water via a retrograde flow of ants. Ants within the raft will move and settle at the leading edge of the raft towards the desired location, causing the raft to move like a living treadmill towards a target. Pruner ants make the majority of ant species and populations in the swamps of West Lucindo. Compared to the ancestral Atta species, pruner ants are overall smaller in body size, an adaptation for living inside the chambers of Mermic great bean trees. The workers can be categorized into 3 castes: minors, mediae, and majors, all based on their size. The minors reach up to 3 millimeters in length, and the majors are the largest at 10 millimeters. And the majors are deployed frequently for combat and nest expansion. Queens aren't much larger than majors, but produce massive amounts of eggs. Their nuptial flights occur at spring, with drones occupying a huge majority of the emerging elates. A virgin queen that recently mated will soon fly out to seek another Mermic great bean tree to colonize. Newly mated queens also carry a piece of fungus with them to start their own fungus gardens. Pruner ant colonies form nests within the hollow warts of the Mermic great bean, where unoccupied chambers on the tree become their new homes, boring a hole into one if it hasn't been breached yet. The ants can also chew away the inner cavity of the warts to expose xylem tissue, adjusting humidity within the chamber to be ideal for brood or fungus rearing. Lucindan mud crabs are quite unique specimens, being an important member of the cleanup team of the ecological community. Mud crabs have a primary diet of detritus, but they sometimes hunt live prey when there's no carcasses or droppings around to snatch up. Lucindan mud crabs are very successful in many environments, tolerating many different levels of salt given they slowly transition into the amount of salinity in the body of water. They start out as planktonic organisms when their mother lays their eggs far inland in river systems, eating algae and greens until they are large enough to metamorphose into juvenile crabs. Mud crabs can have a leg span of over a foot, but tend to be smaller at around 20 centimeters. Reed shrimp are a freshwater vegetarian crustacean, thriving under the abundance of plant matter in the swamps and marshes of West Lucindo. Compared to other crayfish, reed shrimps have an overall sleeker body for traversing through and hiding in dense aquatic vegetation. They can still rapidly propel themselves away from predators with rapid flicking of their tail. They have a slender, narrow claw set that are better adapted to slicing bits of vegetation, with a mottled green exoskeleton that allows them to blend into the green environment well. They thrive in the rivers, estuaries, and lakes of the region. Female reed shrimp produce thousands of roe after mating with a male or via parthenogenesis, which the female will guard under her abdomen until hatching. The hatchlings emerge as planktonic filter feeders until they're old enough to eat grass. Parian water beetles have large hind legs with hair-like filaments that are used to swim. Their 2 front pairs of limbs and antennae are reduced in size to reduce drag, and their wing shells have a specialized gap to hold an air bubble, allowing them to effectively breathe underwater. The Parian water beetle is not a clade that derived from a common ancestor, but have convergently evolved around a dozen times so far on the planet, exploiting semi-aquatic niches that have been left vacant due to human activity. Coloration changes between species and group, but the spotted Parian water beetle is dorsally black with a red patch on the thorax and 4 spots on the abdomen. Most other species are yellow and white in color on their ventral side, including this one. With aquatic insect niches being fairly open on Parias, a group of burying beetles have exploded in diversity in Lucindo's wetlands. Their success is due to their ability to fly to new water sources should their local one somehow run out of food or start drying out. The vertebrates have also claimed many niches in the region, many of which adapted to the specific conditions of the floodlands compared to elsewhere on the planet of Parias. In the wetlands specifically, the specific moisture levels allow for amphibians from elsewhere on the continent to have representation in the area. Exterminator toads live further inland, but their tadpoles infest the water bodies, eating insects in enormous amounts on almost every life stage. They suck up water in their fat reserves so they can survive times of hardship, although they end up being rather squishy if they are caught by predators. They can weigh up to 12 pounds and are nocturnal, targeting insects and small mammals. Exterminator toads are found across quite a lot of Lucindo, primarily in the red sands of the Crimson Deserts, an environment in which they are surprisingly successful. Frost toads are smaller in comparison, but are more generalistic, thriving in many environments across the continent, such as the Great Forest and the High Steppe. They are more active during the day and will estivate or cover themselves in mucus in a state of stasis during times of intense stress, such as a wildfire or a dry bout. They prefer to eat small insects and fish. The red-spotted serpamander has started to become more common across the region in a fossorial worm-like niche compared to its ancestor. Their eyes are small, but still help them to detect light, to help the algae in their skin folds grow, and to help them go underground if they detect predators. They use their large population sizes and burrowing lifestyle to avoid predation and thrive. In comparison to the red-spotted serpamander, the king aquamander is much larger and more resembles the shared ancestor they have, the serpamander, the tiger salamander. Being small and fast helps them be efficient hunters, allowing them to quickly catch up worms, tadpoles, and aquatic invertebrates. The king aquamander avoids predators themselves by hiding among plants, helpful in that they look very green and grass-like. This species is also cannibalistic and will even eat their mate after the mating process is done. Reed shrimp and ants are their favorite food items, but they will eat mud crabs if given the chance. When it comes to the reptiles, alligator descendants dominate the region. The massive, sprawling river systems are the perfect breeding grounds for these animals, and they have split into multiple new niches to avoid further competition with each other. The massive Titan gualgana is the largest gator in the region, and by a long shot. They use this to overpower other alligator descendants as competition has forced these animals to adapt, and fast. Their large body size and robust profile allows them to wrestle down megafauna, alongside elongated caniform teeth, for better grip on large prey. The Titan gualgana grows up to 8 meters in length, with a weight up to 635 kilograms, with a dark green back and a light brownish underbelly. Males will compete for the right to mate, trying to outperform each other in push-up contests as a show of strength and vitality, with violent confrontations being rather rare. After mating, the female will lay a clutch between 12 and 20 eggs, and defend her nest from predators. The young are protected by their mother until they become subadults, upon which they are driven from her care and become independent. Gualganas rarely mob animals together and are quite territorial, but cannibalism is quite low among this species. The coastal running gator has evolved a more efficient running gait to target more prey as a pursuit predator. Their legs have lengthened and become straighter in comparison to the ground, allowing these animals to run after animals that might have gotten away before. They eat fish and mammals primarily, but besides their longer legs and weaker armor, they have not changed that much from their ancestors. Running off to the hummocks away from the wetlands, the pelo changed its diet radically to avoid competition with other alligator descendants. Instead of being a carnivore, the pelo is omnivorous, preferring to eat fruits. Their favorite fruits are citrus and tupelo, but they will eat meat if given the chance. They are quite smaller than their ancestors, with a length of 2 meters from snout to tail, with a weight close to 180 kilograms. Uniquely among crocodilians, its scales are reddish-brown with white stripes along the back. It has a blunt snout with an advanced degree of heterodonty, with large shearing incisors near the front, 2 pairs of sharp cuneiform teeth, and blunt, flattened molariform teeth near the back. Female pelepelos lay anywhere from 20 to 30 eggs after mating and become extremely aggressive in defending the nest. The hatchlings are protected by their mother and feed mostly on insects and small berries, gradually becoming more frugivorous as they mature. Due to how abundant their primary food source is, the pelo is extremely tolerant of other individuals and can be found basking together in groups. The main reptile in the region that isn't an alligator descendant is the Lucindan paddletail. This animal is a supreme ambush predator of the region. Eating small mammals and birds, their camouflage is unmatched. They can lay motionless for days at a time, their superior camouflage allowing them to be almost perfectly undetected. But they can use their paddle-shaped tail to escape into the water when they are targeted by any threats. Their venom is quite strong, allowing them to take down small mammals in a single bite, and dangerous enough for most animals to leave them alone if they don't accidentally walk over them. The birds, comparatively, have not thrived in the region compared to many other clades. The high amount of arboreal predators and more volatile environment could have played a role in this, but the reasons for this are largely unknown. Many migratory birds of many species come and go in the region, but there's only 2 species that exclusively call the region their homes: the Lucindan swamp grouse and the pygmy phoenix. The Lucindan swamp grouse is a generalist waterfowl that eats basically anything it can find, and is a monogamous species. Males and females are practically identical, and competition between conspecifics is rather low. There's enough food to go around for most of the year, and safety in numbers is their primary battle strategy. They are intelligent enough to pick out their partner among a crowd of their own most of the time, but they will move on if they lose their mate. The pygmy phoenix has an interesting evolutionary path. Ancestrally, they would travel between the Great Forest and the swamplands, but the formation of the Lucinda Desert has limited their travel, so many stayed and have developed a land nesting habit, along with the cooperative living arrangement with the vaultdillo. They will nest within vaultdillo burrows and feed their burrowing bodyguards. Pygmy phoenixes form monogamous mating pairs who will often dedicate themselves to a specific vaultdillo to protect their nest by bribing the little xenarthran with food it cannot find on its own. This reduces the distance that the vaultdillo needs to travel at night for food, allowing it to focus on its own breeding and social needs, alongside protecting its birdie friends. Fish have thrived in the region as well, living in all the waterways found on the floodplains and in between the hummocks and highlands. One of the smaller fishes in the region is the mosaic thin goby. They are a small predator that has a flat topside that allows them to hide right on the surface of the water. They primarily eat butterflies. These fishes meet in the highest of water columns on the swamps during the spring and summer and form groups dozens strong, where females wait for a male to come next to them and prove himself with various dances and displays. After that, the eggs are internally fertilized, and after 2 weeks, the females will give birth to around 10 to 15 live fry. They will eat tadpoles and other small bits of food as well when given the opportunity. The black-headed meowfish is an adaptable generalist that has thrived in fresh water across central Lucindo. They lay thousands and thousands of eggs in one sitting, with their mouth on the bottom of their head that allows them to slurp up algae, detritus, or prey animals indiscriminately. Almost like aquatic hogs, they are some of the most generalist fishes on the continent. They use numbers to get by and are around a foot long when fully grown. They have a very high tolerance for low levels of oxygen, allowing them to clear out near anoxic waters infested with too much algal blooms. Reed discus is an aquatic arthropod hunter, preferring mud crabs as their favorite prey. They have exotic-looking stripes that break up their body shape and make them harder to see. Their round, flat, and suspiciously human-like teeth make them great at chewing up crustaceans, and they use these teeth to bite above their weight class. They sometimes will take a bite out of a larger animal and swim off with some free food in its mouth, all whilst their prey barely notices. Green bass pike are fishes that reside in the estuaries, eating other fishes and the occasional semi-aquatic mammal. This animal is built for speed and uses this to ambush their prey or to run away from predators. The largest specimens can be up to 2 meters long, allowing them to even turn the tables and kill young alligators, although larger gators are the green bass pike's primary predator. For a fish, they are rather smart, with developed eyes that allow them to see above the water whilst being below. This adaptation allows them to fling themselves up to 4 meters out of the water to snatch on migratory birds, one of the most bizarre sights on all the continent. A true feat of nature, this animal will do anything to stay on top of the food chain. Whilst many other fishes in the region are green or use other strategies to avoid being seen, the lure fish are confusingly vibrant in coloration. Why are these fishes so bright and noticeable? It's because of their relationships with other animals in the region. These animals pick parasites and clean the maws of apex predators in the marshes for free food and protection. They primarily hang around the many different alligator lineages and the green grass pike, even when said apex predators have no parasites to clean. This is because these animals will act as live bait, swimming around submerged predators and luring mid-tier predators to chase the lure fish. If these smaller animals take the bait, they will be killed by the gator or bass, and the lure fish will get to have the scraps for doing basically nothing but swim around. Hanging around in salt and fresh water, the broadhead shark lives a very vegetarian lifestyle. Descendants of the bonnethead sharks, they have specialized in eating seagrasses and use this to grow their bodies to around 2 meters when fully grown. They still eat crabs as well, but not nearly as much as their ancestors, but will also snatch pieces of carrion when given the opportunity. They use their size primarily to fend off predators, their main predators being gators or other animals out at sea, which we will discuss in a future episode. The all-terrain eelgar are a very bizarre salmon descendant that has made the bizarre decision to make the invasion of land. In a world where many other vertebrates have made established populations there for millions of years. Life does find a way, however, allowing this animal to use its fins and body to bring itself across land, primarily doing this either during mating or to avoid predators. These fish have long snouts and very sharp teeth, using these to both catch fish and defend themselves from other animals. Salmon have become incredibly successful on Parias, being almost unparalleled in fish diversity, and we will see many more salmonids in future Parian episodes. As of many other regions on Parias, mammals have done incredibly well, with many representatives adapting to the unexpectedly harsh conditions. Some live primarily in the highlands and have been found in previous episodes, primarily the southern false quoll and the smooth-snouted mole. The false quoll lineage in particular has been incredibly successful, filling the niche of felids on Lucindo in a world without cats. False quolls are not particularly large, but they are effective predators, being descendants of the only marsupial on all of Parias, the Virginia opossum. Smooth-snouted moles are worm-eating, semi-aquatic animals, using every sense they have except their vision to take down their prey. They prefer murky waters where other animals have a harder time seeing them. The massive amount of alligators in the region have influenced the evolution of every other animal, as they are all under the dominion of tooth and scale. Rabbits have undergone a few different strategies to avoid predation, delving into two new niches. The big-nosed swamp rabbit have dedicated themselves to the marshes, being more aquatic and sleek in the water to the detriment of life on land. This helps them avoid other predators on land, but they have to be swift to avoid death to the gators. A branch of big-nosed swamp rabbit has diverged further to live at sea, but they will be examined further in a future episode. Another lineage of rabbit has adapted to life in the trees, becoming an arboreal generalist. The spotted cabbit are a novel lineage that prefers tree climbing as their lifestyle. Their limbs have changed orientation to allow them to climb more like felids than rabbits, with a body plan that looks more like a short-tailed house cat. They are primarily fruit and leaf eating, staying in the trees but sometimes returning to the floor, using their sharp claws to walk on the tops of branches to grab food. They live in tree hollows and prefer the hummock subregion, as their teeth often chew through older trees to make nests. Their nests are useful as they often get inherited when the individual dies or moves to a new territory, oftentimes by other species like birds or snakes. They are starting to become more generalist in their diet and have been found raiding nests and scavenging more and more frequently with every passing generation. This species is serially monogamous and are quite territorial, as there unfortunately isn't enough room in the canopy for everyone. Raccoonigos are more piscivorous descendants of raccoons. These animals adapted to the marshlands of the southwest, choosing to hunt in shallow waters. The raccoonigo have long, hairless limbs that are used to wade into water without making large disturbances, allowing them to ambush unsuspecting fish and toads. The raccoonigo's long claws, on even longer forepaws, are used to quickly grab unsuspecting fish or reach into burrows, alongside allowing them to still climb trees, albeit more awkwardly. Standing at around a meter tall, it is hard to believe that the gangly limbs of the raccoonigo would be able to support its basal-looking main body. But due to the lower gravity of Parias, these proportions are much more plausible. To keep their claws sharp, they mainly knuckle walk when on the ground, which also doubles as a deterrent to predators their size or larger. Their skin is black while their fur retains their ancestral coloration. The Kiliagau is a tree squirrel descendant with a body plan more adapted towards active predation. With a head-to-tail length of 110 centimeters and a weight of 5 kilograms, it has longer limbs and a more erect posture than its ancestors. Its fifth digit has developed a large, sickle-shaped claw and functions like an additional thumb, while its incisors and premolars have sharper, cutting edges to assist in tearing through flesh, somewhat akin to the extinct marsupial lion of Earth, but scaled down significantly. Kiliagau females mate with several males during the mating season, promoting genetic diversity among her young. The kits, born in litters of 2 to 5, are raised in drays built from twigs, leaves, and other materials such as animal fur, where they are kept safe from predators and nursed on their mother's milk. After weaning her young, the mother teaches them to hunt and gather food on their own. Unlike its ancestors, the Kiliagau caches its food in trees to avoid larger predators at ground level. Birds, especially swamp grouse, are among its preferred prey due to their sheer abundance. Crab-eating modders are mink descendants with blunt teeth, a boxy head, and a more paddle-like tail. These playful animals are social predators, living in monogamous couples and raising young together. They can be territorial, but they often use marks for their territory, primarily with empty crab husks left on the outskirts of their territories in an elegant fashion, alongside their scent markers that they lay in the crab shells. The crab-eating modder is very large for a mink descendant, large in a diet of mud crab and small reptiles. Occasionally they will gang up on larger animals if enough of them are in the area. When a pair of modders meet, they dig a den which they use to raise pups in and to hide from any larger predators. After around a year or two of growth, the pups leave the den and repeat the cycle. Vaultdillos are armadillo descendants that have developed small bodies due to the lack of suitable soil in the swamplands for burrowing, a flattened out, wide armored tail that they can use to block the entrance of their burrow, alongside their beneficial partnership with pygmy phoenixes. Vaultdillos have a more compact, round head with a wide nose and are quite small, no more than 30 centimeters from head to tail. Due to the lack of good burrowing ground in the swamplands, vaultdillos live in rather shallow burrows that are close to other vaultdillos, with more dominant females living further inland than males. Breeding can happen year-round, but females will only breed twice per year. Males will often travel inland to find females to breed with, and will use their claws to intimidate any other males who might try to claim them. Females tend to be much more sedentary than males, as they can almost completely subside on food offerings provided for them by their pygmy phoenix tenants. Both sexes are primarily nocturnal and use their strong sense of smell to find food. The hippopotamus is a massive animal with a semi-aquatic lifestyle to avoid competition and regulate body temperature. Shorter legs and a barrel-shaped body for sleeker profile, flattened hooves to increase swimming speed, eyes located on the top of the head, and nostrils on the top of their head to breathe when submerged. This animal can be up to 4 meters long and weigh well over a ton. With flattened hooves, a tawny brown coat of sleek, waterproof fur, and a more fusiform body shape to increase its mobility underwater, it bears a passing resemblance to its namesake, the hippopotamus. Its eyes are on top of the head to allow it to see above the waterline when submerged. Much like their ancestors, males have a pair of large palmate antlers, which reduces their swimming speed but makes them more attractive to females, as males able to thrive despite the handicap of gargantuan antlers are fit by definition. Male hippopotamus rut for the right to mate with females, who give birth to a single calf on land to keep it from drowning. The mother protects its growing calf from predators before it's old enough to take to the water, where it can learn to swim and wean off its mother's milk. The young strike out on their own once they reach sexual maturity. The hippopotamus can hold its breath for up to 8 minutes at a time, allowing it to feed underwater for extended periods without fear of drowning. It is most commonly seen on land during nightfall, when ambient temperatures are lower, staying in the water during the hot and muggy day. Marabara are a descendant of the capybara and have made some radical changes to adapt to a world with new predators and new competitors. With longer limbs and dense, muscular bodies, they act similar to hippos in their movement underwater. They are considerably smaller than hippos and aren't nearly as violent, having a more strictly vegetarian diet. Being so dense and packed with muscle, they immediately sink to the bottom of a river body and can run along the bottom of a river or lake. Their longer legs allow them to be more efficient runners both above and below water, as well as allowing them to wade in shallow waters without submerging. Besides these adaptations, they primarily act like their ancestors on Earth, living in large social groups and having the good vibes, appearance, and behaviors. Ant hogs are feral pig descendants that have specialized to eat insects, primarily the massive number of ant colonies in the region. If no ants or other arthropods are found, they will hunt other animals instead. In times of troubles, they will team up to hunt, allowing them to take down prey items well beyond their weight class. These mobs don't stick together for long and will disband when the good times return and ant populations boom once more. They have an elongated snout to reach into tight spaces and aid in digging, and large dew claws on their front limbs to help break into insect nests, a tough hide to repel bites and stings, a striped coat for camouflage, and a long, sticky tongue to help lap up ants. At close to 1 meter in length and weighing up to 69 kilograms, it is smaller and leaner than its ancestors. Ant hog tusks are smaller in size, although the dew claws on its front hooves have become larger and more recurved. Boars will search for groups of sows in the area and violently rut for the right to mate with them. The ant hog births litters between 6 and 15 piglets, who are raised in nests until they are large enough to join their mother in looking for food. They tend to wean off their mother's milk after at least a month and eat more plant matter than the adults. Since ant hogs have smaller tusks, they play less of a role in foraging and are mostly used for feeding on larger game in emergencies. Striped barillas are an unusual species of bear similar in build to the extinct calicotheres of the mid to late Cenozoic. Standing about 2.5 meters tall at the shoulders and weighing close to 300 kilograms, the barilla walks on its knuckles, keeping its long, curved foreclaws off the ground. Its coat is a tawny brown with white stripes along the back, with its underbelly and paws being a light cream color. These animals mostly gave up their carnivorous lifestyle, their diet primarily consisting of leaves and fruits. Their long claws allow them to reach into the trees and pull down leaves to eat, a niche mainly led to them by the extinction of other animals in the region. Gorillas engage in serial monogamy, with mated pairs remaining together until the female births her cubs, upon which she usually chases the male away. The cubs are born in a litter of 1 to 2 and wean off their mother's milk around the next wet season, then begin to look for other food sources and learn survival skills until they come of age and they too are sent off. Until they grow large enough to browse on their own, the young regularly eat more insects in their diet. While naturally reclusive, the striped barilla has few predators due to its large size and can kill many would-be predators with a well-placed claw swipe. It has been known to engage in kleptoparasitic behavior while looking for carrion, using its bulk to bully small predators off of a carcass and then eat the body. Floodplain elk are adapted to also be a high browser, using their body size and large neck to feed. They have a flexible upper lip to help strip branches of their leaves, and retain the spotted pattern of their young for better camouflage. They can rear up on their hind limbs temporarily to get higher leaves. These animals have undergone Fisherian runaway, with males having gargantuan antlers that rival the hippopotamus, despite being way smaller. Bucks can reach up to 2.5 meters tall at the shoulder and weigh over 330 kilograms, while does are smaller at 1.5 to 2 meters and 255 kilograms. Both sexes have brown fur with cream-colored underbellies and mottling, with a black upper lip similar to that of a moose or a camel. Floodplain elk enter a seasonal rut, with bucks trying to maintain dominance over their harems and trying to deter any challengers to their title. While their first instinct is to attempt to intimidate each other with loud, booming vocalizations, they are quick to turn to violence should both stags stand their ground. The does all mate with the dominant male and birth 1 to 2 fawns each, rearing them within the herd until they grow old enough to disperse, with males leaving much more frequently. Floodplain elk live in small harems of 5 to 15 females led by a dominant male. While not truly descended from elk or any related deer species, their behavior is similar enough to warrant the misnomer. Rust-toothed beaver are massive beaver descendants with powerful jaws and chisel-like incisors that allow them to gnaw through wood and bone. With a modified digestive system, along with molars and canines that let them eat a wider range of foods. Their more dexterous fingers aid in carrying food and wood, while their webbed hind feet, waterproof fur, and a paddle-shaped tail make swimming easy. The tail is also used to force mud into the cracks of their dams and to communicate by slapping the water's surface. A larger size allows them to wrestle with animals when hunting or defending themselves. Rust-teeth mate for life, with females staying in the lodge for the entirety of their 4-month pregnancy, while males forage for them. Their dams act as corrals to trap fish when hunting or to lure in unsuspecting terrestrial animals, though they also create safe homes for the beavers, make habitats for a variety of species, and mark the rust-teeth's territories. They slap their tails for many reasons, but the primary one is to tell conspecifics to back off from their territories. The decomposing bodies of their prey litter the lake bed, enriching the waters and attracting more animals. By clearing trees, they reduce the impact of wildfires and make it harder for themselves to be ambushed. The robber whale, or masked plantatluga, is the largest of the 5 river narluga species that uses a terrifying and novel hunting strategy. They use their echolocation to kill prey, rapturing the organs in the body of their prey by making noise a little less than 200 decibels in strength, thanks to a highly developed melon and vocalization tract. Their ears are extremely poor, and they use vision to get around, with echolocation becoming more of a weapon than a strategy to see. They have a pinkish pattern besides a black mask, alongside other stripings on the body. Each robber whale has its own unique black and pink pattern, which helps individuals recognize each other. They are solitary but are not super territorial, given how deadly conflict can be between each other. Thankfully, times are good enough for many of them to get by without even thinking of turning to violence on each other. All of these animals have adapted to the subregions of the western floodlands, under the dominion of gargantuan alligators and seasons of rain and fire. In the next episode, we head northward to more tropical ground, covering the novel environment of the savanna of isolation. This region, alongside the jungle on the Lapis coast, are unique on this continent for being very tropical environments, places where mostly temperate adapted animals may struggle, and where stowaways thrive. If you would like to see more Parias content in the future, please like, subscribe, and share the video. This allows more people to see the project and possibly contribute themselves. The life forms on Parias are community made, with people making their own organisms to become canon in the series. If you want to change Parias forever with your own creature ideas, you are more than welcome to join the Parias Discord server, the link to that being in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.